I think now is as good a time as any to go live. Thank you very much, everybody. It's a few minutes before 1 o'clock my time. And yes, I got a bit of sun yesterday as the Woodward Dream Cruise. All will be explained. All will be explained. And I'm also wearing the rare University of Colorado Buffaloes shirt. I wore this last time, and several people say, Steve, was that my imagination or did they misspell university? I'm sure there's a reason. But, things are things are different in Colorado. So, but I appreciate, I wear a lot of Colorado stuff. I've got a lot of people in Colorado who watch these shows, and I appreciate that. And I love all the stuff that gets sent to me. I do have to tell a few eagle-eyed viewers in the audience already spotted the fact that we've got an extra license plate on the set right here, which is the Leta Winter Water Wonderland license plate. That was given to me yesterday at the Woodward Dream Cruise in Detroit, just north of Detroit. The Woodward Dream Cruise every year. And this year it was canceled technically, but everyone still went. And so I went and I gave away a few books, had 5 or 6 people show up. I said, Steve, you mentioned you're going to be here. Thought I'd stop by and say hi. So while I was there, JP stopped by. My good friend JP, who's French-Canadian, but he lives in America these days, stopped by and he brought me that as a gift. And Steve, I got this for you. There you go. So thank you very much. He also gave me a bunch of shirts from South Carolina. So I appreciate that as well. They will be on future episodes of this show. Now, I've also got to add one more thing. I got a very nice handwritten letter with a package. And inside the package was a t-shirt, which I will wear on a future show. But inside the package was this little thing, which some guys in the audience who are veterans of our armed forces might recognize. And I had no idea what this was. And Dwayne, I hope you don't mind me saying your name, Dwayne. Dwayne sent me notes to Steve. I know you said you don't want any more tissue, toilet paper, but I got sidetracked and forgot to send this to you when the story first aired. It's from one of my old ration kits. So who knows how old it is. But if you're in the military, they give you rations. And your ration kit can contain things to eat and also things to take care of business. And my friends, if they give you this as one serving of toilet paper, our military's got bigger problems than I thought. So I don't know how old this is. I don't know what era this is from, but there's not a lot here. As Elaine would say, there is not a square to spare. So there you go. But I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'll wear the t-shirt in a future episode. I got a lot of comments here. Someone asked what the meaning is of the license plate that says karma. And that is, in fact, the Finnish word for snake. Daniel Player asked that, and my car is a Viper. But here in Michigan, all the obvious ones were taken, such as Viper, snake. I don't think they let you bite me. But so I went with the Finnish word for snake, which is karma. Say pronounce it. You have to roll the R just right. Ram50V8 points out that the toilet paper never goes bad. Yeah, I guess so. That would be a good thing. It's got a good shelf life. Tim Denard says, hey, Steve, you made my phone make a noise. So now I'm here. So that means you got a heads up. I like that. I've been getting a lot of people commenting saying they're not getting the notices about my various things going up. I don't know what to tell you. It might be a function, excuse me, of how many things you subscribe to. And YouTube might not want to bombard you with notifications for every single channel. I don't know. But I put them up and some people get notices, some people don't. Barry G says the background looks like it might not be real. And it is fixed. I assure you, this conglomeration behind me is as real as it gets. And so everything back here is, you can look at, that would be a jaw harp for ages 8 and up, which somebody sent me. I think I broke that out last week. And haven't ever played it on, but I'm not gonna. I have zero musical ability. I'm surprised I can speak, but yeah, no, trust me, it's real. I've had people suggest I could green screen it, take a photograph of that, and give me more room back there. But the problem is, what do I do when I want to add something to it? So there you go. Hey, JP, howdy, Steve. JP, I was just talking about you. And this JP is a gentleman who gave me that license plate right there, along with a bunch of shirts from the Carolinas, which will make their appearances in coming days on this show. Thank you very much. It's nice meeting you and a bunch of other people. JP traveled the farthest this year to be at the Dream Cruise, at least to meet me. But I met a bunch of very nice people from one true story. I got to where I was going to go very, very early yesterday morning at the Dream Cruise. And I was in a parking lot, but along the road at about 9:15 in the morning. And I heard someone yell, "Hey, Steve." And I look, and it's a guy in a 1970 bright green, a little bit darker than this color, 70 GTX, a Roadrunner. And I didn't recognize the car or the gentleman. And I wasn't sure I heard it right. You know how things are. So I just went on with my life. And about 10 minutes later, the car pulls into the parking lot next door. The guy gets up, comes walking over, and he goes, "You're the guy from YouTube." And I said, "Yes, I am." I said, "How'd you know where I'd be?" And he goes, "I didn't." He goes, "I was just driving by and I recognized you." So that's good. Douglas Brown says, "Those are dangerous. I tried to play a mouth harp once and almost lost some teeth." Yeah, you got to remember to keep your teeth apart, otherwise you whack your teeth and that wouldn't be good. Mark Heil. Hi, Steve. Hi, Mark. How you doing? Mark's my good buddy from the West Coast of California, of course. Ray Laps, cheers from Toronto. Okay, Steve Hatchie's checking in with from a place that I'm going to have to take a wild stab at, checking in from the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia. And if so, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I don't know many people from that area. The Canadian robot lady spent time out there. So that's my closest connection to the area. And JP notices that his license plate is on the set. Absolutely. I've got some space up here I'm not using. I'm going to start mounting the license plates to get them up and build fit some other stuff in. So Think Trucking. I like the K&K Insurance Dodge number 71. Bobby Isaac or Buddy Baker drove those cars. Buddy Baker never drove the 71. Buddy Baker often drove the number 6, which was actually a Chrysler car, but they claimed it was not, just to get it around the rules. But Bobby Isaac drove 71 for a while, and so did Marcus. So Dave Marcus drove it for a little while after Bobby quit. But the K&K Daytona that particular year was driven exclusively by Bobby Isaac. And it's a pretty cool car. The car still exists. And in fact, I've driven it. David C. Allen, good day from Eagle, Idaho. And by the way, Eagle's a town. There's actually an Eagle, Michigan. Many people are unaware of. Very, very small town. Right off of 69, which is the road between, like, say, Flint and Lansing, and then it curves down. Little town called Eagle, Michigan. Little known. JP says Okanagan Valley is a great place for fruits. Okay. I would guess so. Being near water, it often helps putting moisture in the air. I know that the Traverse City area of Michigan has got a lot of cherries and grapes and apples and so on, largely because of the proximity to the lake, and they've got the rolling terrain, which apparently helps a lot with fog and humidity in the air. Daniel Kester, what about mounting the swords? Yes, that's. I'm gonna have to come in here one day, and I hate to make big changes because people don't like big changes, but I got to figure out what to do with the swords and the license plates. And so one day, sadly, you're gonna turn on a video, and it's gonna be completely different. The bookcases will still be there, the cars and the mics will still be there, but the background is going to be a little different. And I may change the microphones so that they, instead of going up like this, they do this and then go down, because I may need that space, but we'll experiment. So there you go. How much of your time do you decide to your law practice versus your videos? Rafe Garrett. I'm assuming you mean how much time do I devote to them? I shoot the videos and I work around them. So, I basically allotted myself enough time each day to shoot 2 videos. Sometimes I shoot some in advance, but the bulk is on average 2 a day. So I hate to admit such a thing, but I don't. I don't put a lot of time into videos, much more. It's pretty much real time. So to shoot a 10-minute video takes me 10 minutes. I have to edit it another 10 minutes. So it makes my day a little longer as far as the work goes, but I still do both. I multitask. Randall Munson, how much of the D104 or A-static mic behind you, referring to the Lollipop, I assume? And I apologize because I've had more people ask me about that microphone. I don't talk about them that much, but the A-static is a cool microphone. It's one of the most picturesque and obvious and distinctive microphones. When you're thinking of distinctive microphones, you've got the A-static, you've got the RE20, and you've got the big Shure in the middle, which is a very, very distinctive microphone also. But that A-static does not work. So I can tell you right now, people say, Steve, do all your microphones work? I don't know on most of them, but the A-static, I know for a fact, does not work because it was broken, and the guy had it on eBay and said, it's a broken A-static. It does not work. And so I bought it. I got it really, really cheap as a result. So all you could do with it is look at it like I do. So Galen says the D104 is about $75. So that sounds about right. JJ CEO 40, did you practice safe distancing at the Dream Cruise? Yeah, I had the mask and everything. So, we all stood apart. The attendance at the Dream Cruise was fractional compared to previous years, maybe 1/3, maybe a quarter of what it had been in previous years. So there's fewer cars there, but there's still a lot of cars. I mean, there's so many there in a typical year that a reduced number is still a good number. So there was a lot of cars there, but not as many as in previous years. The traffic jams weren't as bad. So it was cool. I'm glad I went. I had a good time. I stood out in the sun, obviously, right during the hot part of the day and got probably 4 hours. So sadly, I got a little bit too much sun, so I apologize. I know I look burned, but I'm fine. Ellen Riddle, what was the name and author of the book you talked about recently? That'd be The Wicked Sister by Karen Dion, and it's on the set right there. I put it there because I often do that. I talk about something, I put it back and I forget about it. And the Fuse Man points it out too, so there you go. Randall Munson says the microphone could be broken or it could need a battery. No, I'll tell you right now, the lollipop part was broken off the stem. It literally broken off, and so I glued them back together. Dan Man, are you a ham radio operator? No, I am not. I get asked that quite a bit, though. Hollywood Slim, not sure if anyone mentioned it yet, but today's VJ Day. I did not know that, but I guess it makes sense because I do know that the war ended against Japan in August. So thank you for pointing that out. Richard R. is checking in from Minneapolis. And Duncan Campbell says he was heating pizza, which made him late, checking in from Melbourne, Australia. Hey, better late than never. And if you got a good excuse like pizza, it's a good excuse. I'm 6 under W got 2 calls from the Department of Social Security Fraud Unit. The robot said I should call a number ASAP with my criminal defense attorney present. That's a new twist. I've not heard that one yet. I've heard them say call this number back immediately. But I've never heard them say, and have an attorney ready. But I guess, they got to make it sound real. Steve checking in from Oakville, Ontario. Thank you for doing that, my friend. Steve checks in quite a bit and also sends me a lot of stories through Facebook and whatnot. And I appreciate that. Lynn Maida, do you own a Tucker? Well, I've got the model of a Tucker right here, but I do not own a Tucker. Tuckers will set you back $1 million minimum. $1 million minimum. So if you can get your hands on one, yeah. But I doubt I'll ever own one because a Tucker is the kind of vehicle that if you owned it, you'd hate to drive it because all it takes is some idiot texting to rear end you and suddenly your museum showpiece is wrecked, so I couldn't do it. I hate to say it, but most of those belong in museums now. Mindbend, did you get rain this morning? You know what's weird? Southeastern Michigan has been threatened with rain for the last 7 days. And I check the weather forecast on my phone periodically. For instance, for the dream cruise yesterday, I wanted to know, will it be safe to bring my Viper down? Because I don't like to drive my Viper in the rain. So on the day before, I was watching the forecast and they kept saying, it's going to rain, it's going to rain, it's going to rain. But if you check the hour by hour, they would move it around. They'd say, oh, it's going to rain in the morning. Oh, it's going to rain in the afternoon. Oh, it's going to rain midday. Oh, and every single time they do that, they eventually walk them all off the board and go, no, no rain. And so I got down there yesterday around 9 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't get home until 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night. And it was still clear skies. And I think sometime overnight it did rain, because I walked outside and I saw some spots that clearly had gotten wet, but it had already dried and it wasn't that hot out. So we've been having some really, really dry weather here in Michigan. So I know some people are getting rain, and I suspect we're going to get a downpour one of these days. But hey, Santa Claus is checking in from the North Pole. You got snow up there? Ice? What do you got up there? Amateur shooter, where's Johnny? I don't know. We've not heard from Johnny Knoxville in quite a while. Daniel Kester, where's the Canadian robot lady? You know, that's a good one. I am going to shoot her a quick note and tell her we're on the live stream and people are asking for you. We'll see if she checks in. Yeah, JP says Johnny's AWOL. That could be. Amateur shooter 90 now and up to 113 in Phoenix. Right now in southeastern Michigan, I got 74 degrees and we're shooting for a high, they tell me, of 78, which is lower than normal. We've been having high 80s for the last few weeks. So, you know, it comes and goes. I wouldn't mind getting a little rain once in a while. Junior Physics, good morning, Steve. Rained this morning in Napa Valley. It's August. Okay. Brianna says Johnny takes breaks every now and then. Mindbend, I have the AC off and the windows open. Yeah, it's not going to be that way here for a little while. I'll tell you that right now. Okay, Canadian robot lady just checked back in and says she'll be there in a bit. Analog designer Jay checking in from San Clemente, California, which I point out from time to time was where Richard Nixon went to spend his later years. Mr. Tarzan today, 100 in East Oregon today. 100. Jimbo, 108 in parts of Oregon yesterday. Really? Wow. It's the cliche. You know, we always think of Seattle rain. We think of Oregon like rainforest or something. We don't think of being hot like that. So that's crazy. Michael Hoffman, 107 in Dublin, California yesterday with thunderstorms this morning. Well, that's good. It cools things off. Hey, Brianna says it's 90 degrees in Florida right now. Wild Bill 57, Central Florida. I can hear the rain on its way. What else can you expect in Florida in August? Yeah, Bill, I spent some time in Florida, and one of the funny things, I've had people tell me this. They go, well, the thing about Florida is on any given day, it can pour and be sunny and hot 10 minutes later. And that happens, especially South Florida, from Miami down. So that you can get up in the morning, sunny out, and an hour later it gets dark, and then it's like, biblical proportions of rain, and then an hour later, bright sunshine again. You can see the water steaming off the grass, So that's subtropical, Retired butcher boy, 111 in Sacramento. These numbers are crazy. Oh. Busted Wallet Garage. It's blazing hot, humid on Beale Street. We're talking Memphis? I've had some very good ribs on Beale Street in Memphis. Jeff Probst, can you speak Finnish? No, I cannot. I do not know any Finnish. It's one of the shames of my existence. My parents didn't teach me a word. Canadian robot lady has checked in. Good morning. Late to the live stream. And here she is. You summoned her. You requested her, and here she is. Just like a good radio personality, she takes requests, and here she is. So, Mindbend, that is true. I spent 12 years near Tampa. And Tampa is, I don't think, as bad as the southern Florida. I think it's even worse down there. I think because of further south you go, it gets like that. Randall Munson, 88 on the Alabama, Tennessee border. If we're doing weather reports. Okay. I always forget that Tennessee borders some other states on the far left there, west. Wild Bill, Steve, Central Florida usually rains in the afternoon, then it's gone by evening. Yeah, that's the thing. You'll notice that there's often a time of day at times of the year where where you notice, like, don't get me wrong, once in a while you get thunderstorms in the morning, but it seems to come more in the afternoons or evenings or overnight. So, Busted Walt George, yes, Memphis. There you go. JJ CEO Rendezvous Barbecue. I forgot the name of the place that I ate at. I went to Memphis a couple times for a conference that was down there, and walking around Beale Street and just literally just walking into a random place and having the best ribs I've ever had. And then later on, on another evening, walking into a different random place and having the best ribs I've ever had. Although I'm pretty certain that the waitress lied to me. And the reason I say this is this waitress is taking the orders from a bunch of people at a table. And I'm looking at the menu, and they have a half slab of ribs and a full slab, or whatever it is, rack, whatever a unit of ribs is. And I go, how big are they? And she goes, order the full. And I go, really? And she goes, that's what I order. I go, you order the full? She goes, yep. She brings them out. It's like Fred Flintstone. So, and I look at her and I go, you've never eaten a full set of these. She goes, I know. She's just trying to boost her sales. CEO 40 points out, I was walking in Memphis. That is true, I was. Carl's Corner says that would be a rack of ribs. Half rack, full rack. Fanny pack. Yeah, there you go. Thanks. Oh, Brianna CC, why a University of Colorado shirt? I noticed that you abbreviated before you got to the university, but it's just it's sent in by a viewer. So I wanted to wear this is a tech shirt. It's not a t-shirt. It's actually an athletic shirt. And I was worried about whether it got warm in here or not. So right now it's not warm, but I was worried it might. It's only 73 degrees. And so I thought, well, I'll wear a tech shirt. It's a little bit cooler. So there you go. Busted Wallet Garage says it is, in fact, a slab of ribs in Memphis. Okay. Nimby Sepp, she orders them and has some for lunch the next day. No, she orders them and has them for lunch the next day, along with feeding the rest of her family for the next few days. Rafe Garrett, can I hire a Canadian robot lady to do my voicemail greeting? I suspect you could. I'm not sure if she wants me telling secrets here, but I just had her record mine. It's not online yet, but it will be shortly. Ellen Riddle, as you're drinking your Gatorade, I'm drinking my Pure Leaf Peach Hibiscus Tea. It's great. Pure Leaf Peach Hibiscus Tea. They didn't have that when I was a kid, but oh, Busted Wallet Garage, the effect of COVID on law schools. Good question. It's having the same effect on them as having on almost all colleges and universities. And that means that many of them are going remote. And that's going to be very, very strange because, and I know people find this hard to believe, but law schools are very, very strict on their academic requirements, So, for instance, many law schools actually still take attendance in every class. And if you don't show up for class, you get dinged. And if you miss too many classes, you just get kicked out of the class. And you can't afford to get kicked out of a class. So people do show up for class. So they actually go to a remote situation teaching with law schools. It's going to basically force schools to address a problem that they would not have normally had. And that is, how do you actually prove someone's attending? I realize there's ways you can do that, but it's trust me, it's a little different. So it's going to, I think, affect the quality of the education, because there's nothing more. I think that the best way to teach law is the way they do it. And that is that they, typical law school class, like suppose you're taking constitutional law, right? Con law. And you go into a constitutional law class and there's 50 people in the room, and some classes are larger, some are smaller, but say there's 50 people in the room. And a teacher, professor assigned you a case and said, everyone in the class has got to read this particular case for tomorrow. So you all read, some case, Brown versus Board of Education. You come into class next day, teacher walks in, room goes silent. Teacher looks down at the attendance sheet and goes, "Mr. Leto, did you read the case?" There's only one correct answer to that, and the answer has got to be yes. Yes, I did. And the teacher will actually sit there and grill one person for anywhere from 10 minutes to the full length of the entire class, and sit there and ask questions, ask you to analyze it. What about this? What if I change this one fact? Okay, what if they didn't argue this, but it argued this? What if this one Supreme Court justice hadn't been there, but this one was? And make you not just read a case like you're reading a novel, but to read it knowing that could happen to you, forces you to read it at such a level to try to understand it, that it's the best way to teach that kind of material. But also it prepares you for when you go into court. Because if you go into court and you're arguing a legal position, when you argue a legal position, a judge might stop you and go, "Wait a second. If what you're saying is true, doesn't that mean this? Okay, what about this? Okay, well, that doesn't make any sense, because if what you're saying, you've got to be able to do that. And it forces you to understand something so well that you can actually explain it, defend it, and all while you're thinking on your feet and doing it quickly. None of this, give me 10 minutes. And I remember being in a law school class before where you have some real, what should we call them? Militant professors, where the professor asks the student a question and the student looks down and starts digging through their papers. And it's like, the answer better not be there. The answer's got to be in your head. Tell me. And they're not doing it to torture you. They're doing it to teach you how to think like that on the fly, which is an extremely useful skill set as an attorney. It's useful in life too. So I think that the person face-to-face teaching in law schools is important, but they might not be able to do it for a couple of years based on what's going on now. So DePaul 31 sounds like a scene from The Paper Chase with John Houseman. You are correct. I've seen that movie. It's very good. I watched it not too long ago. And I'm here to tell you that the scenes in the classrooms in that movie are very accurate. The only thing you're not getting there is the length of time. 90 Knots points out that we do call it the Socratic method. And that is, in fact, what they do call it. And so the scenes in the movie where he calls on people are very accurate in that sense, but you have to live it. You have to live it. And I can tell you that I had both good experiences and bad experiences getting called on in law school. And I can tell you that anybody who went to my school would remember one particular professor whose first name was George, but spelled Jorge. I think it's Swedish. But it's neither here nor there. I'm simply pointing that out because I'm Finn, and Finns and Swedes. And the man was extremely strict. He was known as, but he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And one day he assigned like 5 cases for the next day. And he's like, read all 5 of these cases. And one of them was the case that was involving the lawsuit between the two oil companies. And at one point in time, the largest jury verdict in American history came from a lawsuit involving one oil company suing another oil company. And I forgot the name of the case or anything like that. Someone else could probably come up with it. And we'd all read our cases, and people were frightened of being called on by this professor because he knew his stuff so well. And I had, the night before, read the case about the oil companies because I found it fascinating. And I'd read it all the way through. And I'd meant to read one or two of the cases. And I didn't get to them. And I go into class petrified that he's going to call on me for the wrong case. And instead, he called on me for that case. And he just sat there and grilled me and grilled me and grilled me. And I knew it. I knew it. If he'd only called me on one of the other cases, I would have just crashed and burned. And I remember walking out there going, yes, because there's so many people in the class, and they call on people at random, but they don't call on people until they won't call on you again until, so they'll actually mark them off. They'll do it, so you can't be prepared. But I dodged a bullet, but I looked like a genius for doing it. So I got lucky. Hammond Egger, I was a programmer who went to law school. Then I decided I'd rather be programming. Okay. Did you finish law school, or did you just start and realize you weren't interested in that? So Michael Hoffman, I like the exceptionally old professors who are still so enthusiastic about their discipline. I had a bunch of those. I can tell you right now that everyone who went to Southwestern University School of Law or went to Los Angeles knew a guy named Professor Carlin, Karlin, Professor Carlin. He taught a bunch of classes, including constitutional law, and he was just a joy to watch teach. He would call on people. He'd ask questions. He wasn't mean to anybody. But it was a pleasure to take his class. But you would learn stuff, and he's one of these guys that you just think of fondly years later. Like the name makes me smile. He was such a good guy, and many schools have got professors like that. And hopefully, the deans are looking for people like that and make them stick around, do what they can to keep them around because they are so good. And I agree with that as well. Igmothimagus. I have no idea what that means. So when you are reading a case, are you reading the stenographer's report or some other sort of summary? What we are reading when we're reading cases in law school is the reported cases that are put out by the appellate courts. It can be the Supreme Court of the United States, the Supreme Court of a state, or any lesser court of appeal. So in other words, I try a case, okay? I'm defending somebody and they're prosecuting my client, and let's say my client gets convicted. Heaven forbid. I file an appeal of that conviction, and on appeal, the court that hears the appeal will quite often write an opinion as to explain why they ruled the way they ruled. And then, of course, if somebody doesn't like that opinion, you then appeal that, and you can appeal. So that's how cases get to the U.S. Supreme Court. The higher up the chain you get, the more important the case becomes, because if you get a case on appeal up here that rules on a certain way, it will affect all of the lesser courts below it. So if I appeal a case to the Michigan Court of Appeals, okay, and they rule a certain way, well, it's good to win, but the problem is they're not the Michigan Supreme Court. And in the federal system, if you get the Ninth Circuit to rule in your favor, well, it'll bind people in the Ninth Circuit courts going forward, but it won't bind anybody else because it's not the U.S. Supreme Court. So what we're reading is the opinions drafted by the majority, and you often do read the dissenting opinions also to understand the thought processes. And that's actually one of the most disturbing things about going to law school, is that you are in some classes told, read this case, and you get an appellate opinion from the Court of Appeals, and you read it and you go, wow, that makes complete sense. A couple of days later, they go, okay, now read the next case where somebody appealed that to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court reversed it. And you read the majority opinion at the Supreme Court and go, wait, that reads just like the dissent from the lower court. And then unfortunately, you realize that at the highest levels of all of this, many of these questions become political. They are not bright line answers where it's like, oh, this is what the Constitution says, you win. it's not the way it is. So, the Fuse Man, did the law school in California specialize in Michigan law? No, they specialized in California law. When I graduated law school, I could have taken the still could take the California bar, but I could have taken the California bar instead of the Michigan bar. But I chose to take the Michigan bar because I planned on practicing law in Michigan, which is where I'm from. I have friends who are licensed in both states. I've got friends who are licensed only in California. California bar is an extremely difficult bar exam to pass, I can tell you that. But I did not take the California bar. So when I got out of law school in California to take and pass the Michigan bar, I took classes because Michigan law and California law are very, very different from each other. And the Michigan bar exam has two halves. One half is specifically just Michigan law. So I knew that I was going to need some help on that. So I took some classes to cram on that. Someone else asked, Mindbend, think you could teach, Professor Leto? Actually, I've mentioned before, I have taught. I taught for 10 years at the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law. And also I taught Michigan history at University of Detroit undergraduate. And I love teaching. I absolutely love teaching. I would consider teaching again if somebody offered me a job teaching classes I would enjoy teaching, which would be Michigan history or consumer protection or UCC or lemon law, but that's not a full class, things like that. And then I would, but the problem is there's only so many schools around, and driving time and all that. But when I was teaching at the University of Detroit, it just happened to work out my schedule that it would fit into my schedule perfectly. So I did that for a while. Ral PH says Pennzoil versus Texaco. That does sound correct. And basically what happened, it's been a while, but basically one oil company was trying to buy another oil company, and then a third oil company intervened, and one of the oil companies claimed that the other oil company caused them to tortiously breach the contract, and big mess. But that sounds correct. Pennzoil versus Texaco. 90 knots, Barbary classes. I wasn't Barbary, but Barbary is one of the bar review classes. I did not take Barbary, but I know what you're talking about. So yes, I have considered teaching. By the way, the Fuse Man asks, I can tell you that I have students who call me from time to time. And Justin, I don't know if Justin's watching right now or not, but Justin's a former student of mine. Now he's an attorney in New York City. And he called me recently, and he always addresses me as professor. And and the other day he jokingly said, Steve, he goes, is that odd? And I said, no, technically speaking, I go, it's like the president. Once you're president, even if you leave office, they address you as president. I said, so once I've been a professor, you can call me professor. I'll take it. Kurt points out, nice shirt. Thank you, Kurt. I believe Kurt is the gentleman who, along with his wife, sent me this shirt. And I hate to point out, Kurt, but you may have noticed this, but there is a typographical error right about there. But hey, it's a cool shirt. Carl's Corner says, hey, if you teach, there'll be no YouTube videos. Oh, no, there would be. YouTube videos are the one thing I'm going to continue doing, regardless. Pennzoil obtained a jury verdict of $10.53 billion GSD maximum. Yeah, that sounds about right. And that's one where the jury asks for a calculator, and someone's in trouble. So, Steve D, I sent you an email about the former face and neck tattoo ban at the D Casino in Vegas. Any thoughts on whether or not it was unconstitutional? I don't remember seeing the email, and I apologize. But if you're telling me that a private casino, and you're seeing how I'm going already on this, if a private casino had a rule keeping people out who've got face or neck tattoos, the question is that constitutional? And the argument is, what constitutional rights do you think are being breached there? Because if you're saying the First Amendment, the casino is not the government. The casino they're a place of public accommodation, but they're not the government. So it can't be the First Amendment. So then you'd have to say, well, is it possibly discrimination of some sort? And then, of course, you have to fall into a class. So if they had a rule that said you can't come in here if you are a woman, or you can't come in here if you're Catholic. Maybe they can do that. I don't know. But but the question is, what class are you in if you simply have a face or neck tattoo? So I'm not sure. But there's going to be an argument about whether or not that's a constitutional violation or not. I'll take a look at that. Jimbo, would you ever wear an Ohio State t-shirt? Absolutely. 51 weeks out of the year. I just wouldn't wear one around the time of the Ohio State-Michigan game in years that they play the game. There's not going to be one this year, obviously. Fred Canavan, is your garage set up for mechanic work? Do you work on your own cars? It's set up where I could if I wanted to, but I haven't in a while. The last things I've done to a car, like oil changes or minor stuff under the hood, but nothing major. Batteries, the windshield washer thing on an Explorer, which is also the radiator overflow, replaced one of those, but nothing major. Bart Neal, what is your take on the old O.J. Simpson murder case? Well, you don't have to say old. It's just the O.J. Simpson murder case. It's interesting because I actually wrote a chapter about Nicole Brown Simpson's murder in my book, American Murder Houses. And I actually did some research on that years later because of my book. And what's interesting, and the question is, do you think he did it? I personally think he did. But, he was found not guilty, so there you go. But the most interesting question that nobody ever talks about is the fact that they held the trial in downtown LA when, technically speaking, it should have been held at a different courthouse because that county, the way the courthouses are, they have their own little jurisdictions. And many people assumed that the trial had been moved to the downtown LA courthouse because the prosecution wanted to look unbiased. And that's not what happened at all. You'll recall there was an earthquake in Northridge, and the Northridge earthquake damaged a bunch of buildings, including the courthouse that the trial should have been in. So at that point in time, the prosecution had the right to basically put it anywhere in the county. And when they realized they couldn't put it in the courthouse that it was supposed to be in, I believe it was Gil Garcetti. But anyways, the guy who was in charge of making that decision said, well, it's going to be a media circus. And the only other courthouse in the county that can handle the media is going to be the downtown courthouse, which is where they held it. It was not a political decision. It was a combination of the earthquake damaged the other courthouse, and this was the one courthouse that could accommodate the media. Joel Kirschman reminds us that Robert Kardashian had an interesting reaction to the verdict. I remember watching. I was at work. I was in my office, and an attorney next door to me had a TV set, and I'd heard a verdict was coming, so we went and sat in his office and watched it on TV. And they announced not guilty, not guilty, and everybody reacts. And Robert Kardashian does a like you could tell he was the most stunned. He was clearly stunned. So how to read into that, I don't know. The sad part about that whole thing is that the name Kardashian later on took a whole different meaning, which I don't want to get into here. So Justin McBride, have you ever had experience with mock trials? I did mock trial in high school. If so, or even if not, do you like the concept of mock trial programs in high schools? Yes, I do. I've never done one in high school, but we did mock trials in law school, and I taught trial practice, and every single student of mine did a mock trial at the end. And I've heard of them doing them in high school. And it's interesting, I think, for kids to experience different things. And so I think the idea of, everybody's heard of trials. By the time you graduate high school, you know what a trial is. You've heard about them on TV. You've watched them in movies. You know all that. But to actually take a bunch of kids and go, okay, you pretend you're a defense lawyer. You pretend you're a prosecution attorney. Here's a bunch of facts. Get a bunch of people to play these roles and do a trial. And I think that process would be very, very enlightening, educational, even if they didn't ever want to get into the field of law. It would just because anytime it forces you to get in there and think about something on a different level, I think is a good learning experience. So, Rafe Garrett, ever had a Tesla lemon law case? I've had one or two, and I know attorneys who have, but not many. And my understanding is that Tesla is doing a pretty good job of taking care of their consumers. And Tesla already has such great goodwill with their buyers that for the most part, they're doing pretty well in that regard. I know there's a lot of people talking about Tesla's writing up the repairs as if they're not repairs. That's totally irrelevant. I've done videos on that. But Sub GR77, I sent you an email about a sovereign citizen and a sword. Was it too graphic to use? Or did you miss it? No, I saw it. Unfortunately, it's too graphic to use. And I don't like to get into nitpicking about these things, but lately I've had 2 or 3 of my videos get demonetized where YouTube runs the videos through some kind of filter looking at the language in the video, which is just me talking, and they trigger off of keywords. And if there's certain words in a video, it'll actually demonetize the video. You can then appeal the demonetization, and I'm about 75% on getting those reversed. But lately, I had 2 in a row that I lost. And I know why they got demonetized. I simply used a word, which out of context, you could say, well, that word could be used differently. But that's not how I used it. But the appeal process, so unfortunately, there's some stories I skip over because it's like, I hate to go through the hassle. But I've had a couple where I'm like, I don't even care. But yeah, I hate to admit that. So Joseph Brewer, love your channel from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Yeah, I apologize. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm suspecting that the GH in your last name is not the same as in Pittsburgh. Jim Wilson, why can't an average cop walk into Congress and arrest people for reported crimes? That is an interesting question. Now, of course, the second they walk out of Congress, they can get arrested for crimes. But the Congress people have got immunity, and this makes complete sense. That when they're in Congress, in session, you can't arrest them. Otherwise, I would just hire a sheriff and go, here, arrest a bunch of people I don't like and get them out of there before a vote gets taken or something. So there are certain rules they have about when and what laws they're subject to. But it goes back to the old days. I suspect there were probably monarchs back in the old days who didn't like the little group of people who was running things, who would just say, hey, arrest all the people I don't like and stick them in jail until we get this business taken care of, then let them go. So Michael Doherty, do attorneys prefer to settle a case or go to trial? Most attorneys prefer to settle. I know some who enjoy going to trial. The biggest problem, of course, is you don't win them all at trial. And so, you got to win a bunch to make up for the ones you lose. And settling a case 99 times out of 100 means that your client's happy with the settlement. So if your client's happy, then it's a good thing. So Mount Roanoke, did the big package of toilet paper ever show up at your office? I got 2 cases of toilet paper shipped to me, but I don't believe either one of them was sent to me by the person who got upset when I said I hadn't received it yet. So, Sub GR77, I was paid to be a juror in a mock trial. How much did they pay you? Did they pay you in real money? Because I know that jurors in real cases don't get paid much. So, NIMBY Seps is when I was in school in 6th grade, we went to the courthouse and watched local cases. I got an even better one for you. I was handling a drunk driving case in Troy, Michigan. And I've handled a few cases in that courthouse before. And at the time, there were 3 judges. I knew all 3 of them very well. And one of them in particular, I'd been in front of a whole bunch of times. And the day before the court date, the court clerk called me and said, "Hey, Steve, we got a question for you. Once a year, this judge likes to go out to a local high school and conduct the trials and the hearings and conduct court on a stage in an auditorium in front of the entire high school student body. They do this for maybe half a day, but all morning or all afternoon. Maybe it was a whole day. I don't know." And he goes, "You are one of the people scheduled to be here tomorrow with your client. You have a choice. We can adjourn you and bring you back in court anytime you want." He goes, "Or, let's find door number 2. Or if your client agrees and you agree, we will have you come out. You'll be one of the people that's being handled in front of this high school class, like the whole high school student body." And he goes, "And I'll let you know right now," he goes, "the judge will give you some leniency in exchange for this. Because when you go to court, you didn't sign up to be put on public display in a high school, okay? You signed up to go into a courtroom and get in front of a judge, and there might be people in the gallery, but it's not quite the same." I called up my client. My client jumped on it like a loose ball in the end zone and said, "Absolutely, absolutely." So I called back and said, "Yep, we'll do it." So they go, "Okay, be at this high school at this time." They told us where to meet. I met with my client, talked to him about it. And it was, I wish I had film of it, but I don't. But we actually were sitting in the front row of a high school auditorium, just like at a bad school assembly. But up on stage was I'm guessing a table that they put a drape around. And they had the flags on the stage and the state seal. And the judge was sitting there. And sitting next to him was a court reporter and a court clerk. And they actually had 2 podiums, and they had it set up. It was like a watching like a debate or something. And judge calls the case, "Ready, Your Honor." And my client and I get up there, and we're standing at one podium, and prosecutors at the other, and boom, 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 boom. And it wasn't a trial. It was a hearing, and we'd reached an agreement. But when it came time for the sentencing, I saw my client got a deal. He got a better break than he would have gotten otherwise. And so the whole thing was conducted in front of, I don't know, a couple hundred high school students. And I always wondered, I didn't talk to any high school students after, but I'm always curious to know. I suspect that was a very, very useful thing for them to see, because they saw a bunch of adults, attorneys, but also some of the litigants, the defendants. And they saw, like my client, who's a young man, get up there and say, "Yeah, I got arrested for drunk driving. I drank too much alcohol. I was driving. I shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry." Plead guilty to something. And then they got to see what happened. And a bunch of points and fines and costs and, treatment and this and that. And a bunch of the people in the audience either were about to get their driver's licenses or had just gotten their driver's licenses. And so I suspect that was one of the most sobering things for them to see. So it's probably a very, very good thing for them to be doing. But it's the only time I've done that. But it was very, very interesting. So Betty Anderson has paid $10 a day for jury duty. And Daniel Kester says in California it's $15. Canadian Robot Lady says that many years ago in provincial court, my jury pay was $28 per day. Of course, that's Canadian, right? Just kidding. Wait, $28. I think I've got 20, 30, 35. I got 45 Canadian right here. So that's good for a day and a half of Canadian jury duty. The discerning hiker says Texas has teen court where fellow students hold trial on a case that could go to a jury. It's a way to get kids to see the error of their ways before they get in real trouble and get in a jury. Oh, excuse me, in juvie jail. Yeah, the real question is, do any of them become power hungry? And does the power corrupt? And if so, does the power corrupt? Absolutely. Sid Barrett asks about Lincoln arresting the Maryland legislature. I'm not sure about that one. That doesn't ring a bell. Joel Kirschman, how is it legal to pay jurors less than minimum wage? That is a great, I've never heard that question asked before. because jury duty is considered to not be a job. It's part of your civic duty. But I can tell you there's two interesting points. One is they could pay you enough to make it worth your while, right? Or they could hire professional jurors. And that's the one which makes you wonder. What happens if in civil lawsuits, for instance, they simply got a panel of jurors that they thought were so good that they could hear this case, then hear this case, and hear this case, and you just paid them for their work. But probably never happened. 99 civic duty. Got that right. Dixie Champagne, I got $25 to be a secretary on a grand jury. Grand jury is a whole different ballgame. Yeah. Mice Elf, I'm the only person I know who's never been called for jury duty. Yeah, I had a long streak going where as an attorney, I'd gotten the thing in the mail saying you might get called, but I never had to go to court. And then about 5 years ago now, I actually had to go down, sat through voir dire, and then got eliminated from the pool. So I'd love to know which attorney kicked me, but that was in front of a judge where the judge did the kicking after consulting with the attorneys. So the attorneys were so bad at asking questions that neither of them found out that I actually taught trial practice in law school. I don't think. I'm trying to remember. I know they missed a bunch of important stuff. So. Hey, Steve, what are those leaning on the wall on your left? Leaning on the wall on your left. So left, over here. That's a book called Paddle to the Sea. That's a license plate from Nostalgic Motoring, my friend who is a licensed auto broker here in Michigan who finds classic cars for people, if that's what you're referring to. Nomad Don is a term counselor only used in the courtroom. You don't hear that very often, but they often do refer to us as attorneys and counselor. So you'll often see it. It'll say, Bob Smith, attorney and counselor. I've had people address me as counselor, mainly joking, but you never hear about that. But I do often tell people, and I've mentioned this to students all the time, is keep in mind that when you go to an attorney can tell you the law. The law says this, the law says this. You're allowed to ask the attorney, and what do you advise? What should I do? What do you think I should do? What would you do if you're me? And I know a lot of attorneys who don't like that question. If you've been around the block a few times and you have any life experience, you can explain it from your own point of view. If you've seen these kind of cases before, you can explain it from that point of view. But you are allowed to give advice as well. And that's the counselor part as opposed to the attorney part. So someone asked about an update on Crazy Town Thomas Schiraldi. Nothing yet. Sorry. CB Doc 225. Can a city dump runoff water onto private property? How are they dumping it? Are they simply rerouting the landscapes the water goes there? Or are they literally dumping it? Or is it coming out of something? How's that working? I need to know more about that. William Michaels, I get called all the time, but get kicked because of my law enforcement contacts. The question is, if you ever got called for a lawsuit, though, in civil litigation, I don't think anybody would care, Blah, blah, blah. Are you planning to take the paddle to the sea? Not anytime soon. But I can tell you that the book Paddle to the Sea was a gift from a viewer. And he said, have you ever read this book before? And I said, of course I have. I'm from Michigan. And people my age read that in elementary school. They don't teach it anymore. Wonderful book about how all the Great Lakes are interconnected. And the heart of the book is about a hand-carved canoe that a little boy made and throws in the water and the travels it takes. And to make sure that it never gets taken out of the water by somebody finds it, it says, I am paddle to the sea. Please put me back in water on the underside of the canoe. And so on my canoe, the one that I use when I go out and about in Michigan, it says on the sides, down both sides, please put me back in water. And it's directly from that book. So when the guy said, have you read the book? I said, yeah, of course I've read the book. I've got that down the side of my canoe. So but it's a wonderful, wonderful book. So if you, it's a children's book. It's a children's book. But if you know, like elementary school, middle-aged kids who are interested in the outdoors or might be, it's a great way to teach kids about how important the lakes are and how interconnected they are and how they affect our lives and so on. So CB Doc 225 says they installed a tin horn to redirect water to my property across the road. Yeah, in that case, you might. I see, and I'll admit I don't know off the top of my head because it's going to vary from state to state. But you might want to contact somebody from the state about that, because I know that in Michigan, if you redirect water from one place to another, the water that naturally exists someplace, the people of the state of Michigan want to know about that and want to make sure that nothing weird's happening with it. And simply just taking it from one spot and redirecting it over here for another, there might be a problem there. I don't know. If it damages your property, you'd certainly have a possibility of making a claim there also, but you need to consult a local attorney on that one as well. JP says the National Film Board of Canada has a great video about Paddle to Sea. Saw it many times. Yeah, I've seen that also. In fact, that's on YouTube. You can look up Paddle to Sea on YouTube and you'll find the Canadian Film Board movie. Keep in mind that the movie is about a canoe going down the river and the lakes. So it's not a lot of action as far as that goes, but it's a fun movie. Josh Joslin, is it 95 degrees in there? No, but thank you for asking. It is 76. I have it right here, just in case. I'm always ready to hydrate. Blah, blah, blah says stormwater management. Yeah. And the question of is stormwater or is it regular flow and what kinds of things? Tom says in one of her jury calls, my wife was asked if she knew anything about the law. She said yes. She's learned tons from Law and Order. And she made it to the next level. That's funny. Yeah, I watch LA Law. Fred Hill, Steve, do you still have your book about the bar fire? I assume you mean the Italian Hall disaster? Death's Door? Yes. If you want any of the books I've ever published, go ahead and send me a note at steve@latoslaw.com. That'd be Death's Door. I've got copies of that. I can sign it and send it to you, and we can do the payment through Square, which is secure like PayPal. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, I've got that. I got a couple other books too. So I can take care of that for you. Daniel Kester, there are many videos on YouTube from wall builders about American history. I'm not familiar with that channel. I'll have to check it out. I will check it out. Douglas Brown, LA Law may not have been accurate, but is entertaining. That's true of a lot of television. LA Law is interesting, especially in the early years, and towards the end, it started getting crazy. At some point in the show's history, Arnie Becker and his secretary fell out of the ceiling onto the desk of like a partner at the firm. And at that point, you're like, okay, now they just run out of ideas, right? So, but I also can tell you that I was going to law school while LA Law was on the air, which couldn't watch the show that much at that moment in time. So the Fusman, I wonder if mentioning you watch Night Court would help you on jury duty. You never know. MD Melastrange got to work tonight. Night all. Thanks for being here when you were. I've told the story before, but it's too good to not tell again. My brother, I've got an older brother who's been called to jury duty a whole bunch of times, and he was seated in a group of people who were going through a voir dire, and there's a bunch of people in the box and a whole bunch of people in the courtroom. And the typical questions they always ask, do you know anybody? And they're going through the people, and they call on a person in the box with my brother, and they go, do you know the judge? Do you know? And points at one of the jurors, one of the attorneys goes, do you know this attorney? And the person goes, well, sort of. And how do you know this person? He's on TV. I see him all the time. He's always representing guilty people. And the guy was well known as being somebody who always represented the worst cases on earth. And they had to give all kinds of warnings and instructions and like, disregard that comment. No. Is there anyone here who assumes that his client is guilty because he's here? You know, that kind of thing. So it's pretty bad. Betty Anderson says, all your brothers are older. Yeah, technically they are. It's my oldest brother. That's what I meant to say. Oh. Phantasm Video Vault. Hey, Steve, sorry, just popped in. Greetings from Connecticut. Well, thanks for checking anytime. Anytime you want. Paul Dermilio asks, do you have any of your Michigan's Columbus books? Yes, I do. That's the biography of Douglas Houghton. And so I have that also. I've most of my books. There's 2 books of mine that are out of print. The Timothy Masters book and the Winged Car books are out of print. Everything else I've got copies of. Josh Joslin asks, is voting registration the pool for jury duty, or do courts get your name and does the name go back in the hat? They get your name and information from several different places. One of them is voting registration. But I've also heard them pull it from driving records. I've heard them pull it from tax records. I know people who are off the grid and have been called. And they're like, how did I get called? And it's like, well, if you pay taxes, they know who you are and where you live. Perfect Stranger, Denny Crane, Boston Legal. I hate to say this, but Boston Legal is one I've never seen. I've never seen it. Now, Better Call Saul, Duncan Campbell asks, and I can tell you that I watched 4 or 5 episodes of Better Call Saul, and it just didn't take. I found it entertaining, but it wasn't enough to draw me in. So sorry. Shirley Dutchy, hello from Alaska. I just received Death's Door. Did I send it to you? And if so, did I send it to Alaska using media mail and you got it? If nothing else, that right there, my friends, there's still hope. I mentioned in a video about a week ago that it took 26 or 27 days for a letter of mine to make it from Michigan to Cincinnati, which ain't that far. Oh, boy. Daniel Kester, did you read either of the books I sent you? I'm trying to remember which books you sent me. I've got a stack of reading I've gone through, and I've read several books sent to me by viewers lately. I'm trying to remember which ones are which. JP says, Better Call Saul is similar to Breaking Bad. It takes a while to get it. I love both. Nemo, are you participating in any of the Johnny's Treasure Quest in Michigan? Johnny's hiding $1 million in treasure. I've seen articles about that. I haven't really talked about it that much. It's so hard to tell if these things are real or I don't know. But no, I'm not participating. JJCEO, is there a relationship between Michigan no-fault car law and no-fault divorce law? No. Michigan no-fault merely means that you buy insurance in your car. It doesn't matter who does it. Something bad happens to your car, your insurance pays for it, for the most part. If your car is legally parked, another story. On the other hand, no-fault divorce merely means that anybody can file for divorce, and no one's going to go, your reasons aren't good enough. So, Perfect Stranger says, I believe Texas is voter registration and driver's license for jury duty. And then the real question is, are there different jurisdictions or is it statewide? Because my understanding is that in Michigan, I believe the circuit courts can each do whatever they need to do to draw jury pools. So they can tap into several different things. So it might be different from county to county. That's what so I don't know. I'd be curious to know about that. Mark Heil, have you watched the Australian series Rake? I have not. Is it on any channels I can find? I've got like 3 million channels on my cable. I watch the same 4 over and over again, but I've got the channels. So if it's available, I'd watch it. That's one I've always heard about, but I don't think I've seen it yet. Newsflash. Hi from Alpena. Hey, thanks for checking in from Alpena. Alpena is up here in Michigan, Lower Peninsula, northern Lower Michigan. Tommy Cash. I sent a copy of Death's Door to his niece, and she got it in 4 days in Massachusetts. She loves it. Thank you. Well, hey, thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Steve Mack, I'm going to order Death's Door. Steve, I believe you're in Canada. And normally, I qualify my statements to say I do not ship books internationally because the costs can be prohibitive. But I'm going to make the offer right here, right now, with respect to Canada. I will ship books from today's show. Ralph says, thank you, Steve. I enjoy your content. I've served once on a jury nearly 25 years ago. I think I got $12 a day. Yet no one's doing it for the money. Nimbycept, do courts keep a list of people not to call, like victims of violent crimes? I don't know. I've never heard that before. I do know people who've gotten notices who knew they could not serve and have called and said, I cannot serve. And the best example of that might be, for instance, if you're a convicted felon. And if you know that you can't serve, you might be able to call the clerk and say, I am a convicted felon. Sorry. If I show up, you're going to kick me out anyways. And you might be able to get out of it that way. But I don't know if they actually keep lists of that or not. I don't know. You know, you'd think nowadays that with the computers they've got, they could somehow like cross-reference these things. It's asking too much. Richard R. Rake is on Netflix. I will make a mental note and I'll watch it this afternoon. Steve Mack, I will pay shipping. No, sir, I insist. Oh, Ralph PH. Redirecting water is a big no-no here. Yeah, that's the thing. But the question is, if it's the government doing it, if it's a municipality or a county or a state, then what happens? So there was a real crazy case here in Michigan. It's been a while since I looked at it, so I can't really get into the details of it. But there was a guy who owned a big, huge piece of property. And for some reason, he decided to dig a big pit in the middle and fill it with water. Filled it with water, big pit. Well, a hole in the ground filled with water could be considered a pond or a lake. So he's got this pond or lake on his property. And next thing you know, there's birds landing on it, taking off, stopping over on their trips north and south. Somewhere along the line, he decided to remove the pond or lake. And so he was going to go to drain it and put it back the way it was. And when he went to do that, the local authorities stepped in and said, you can't do that. You can't drain a lake. And he said, I made it. What do you mean I can't drain it? And so a big fight broke out over at what point is a man-made lake under the jurisdiction of somebody other than the man who made it. But, you know, the problem is I don't know if the laws were actually written, planning on addressing that exact concept. So, Daniel Kester's heard that they get a lot of the jury notice information from voting rolls. That's true, but I know people who don't vote who get called. Santa Claus, what do attorneys like to get as Christmas presents? Asking for a friend. You know, here's the thing. I'll tell you two things. Many attorneys are doing okay financially, okay? So you have to ask yourself, does this attorney appear to have money to buy the stuff he or she wants? So if so, then you got to go, okay, I got to think outside of the box here, because if it's something he or she wants, they probably already have it, right? But the other thing is that a lot of people go, they start thinking about the knickknacks and desk type stuff. And here's the thing. A lot of attorneys have got a desk and an office. And if you look around, you'll see tons of that knickknack type stuff. And the question is, do you really want to give them more of that kind of stuff? Or can you find something that's very different and unique, you know? So I really do appreciate everything I get sent. And if I can wedge it in behind me, I will. But I really, really enjoy it when someone puts thought into it. You know, this guy wanted to talk to me about the USS Cole. But he could have just sent me a letter. I would have read it. I probably would have done a story on it. But he did this because he wanted to he put a lot of thought into that. And so JP, the license plate, Winter Water Wonderland, I got my name on the set, but now it's on the set on a historic license plate from Michigan. The Winter Water Wonderland was what the license plates were like years ago in Michigan, And so a lot of thought goes into that. And I know that it's an old cliche, but it's true. It's a thought that counts. It's a thought that counts. So, when I was a younger person, my brothers and I had a joke that when we went someplace and we were expected to give a gift, it was not inappropriate to pull your wallet out and just take a bunch of money and go, here, I'm a guy, take it. No card, no gift bag with tissue, no, just it's money, take it. It's a gift that keeps on giving. And so my brothers and I would routinely give each other money like that. And it's, oh, here, this is appropriate. Here. Sal Luna points to watch. Yeah, here's the thing. Heaven forbid anybody actually give me a watch as a gift. No offense. This is on my wrist every single day. It's going to be hard to displace this watch. So Carl's Corner gives Steve a $100 bill in plastic. Yeah, I could put that on the side. I could mount it. The problem is I couldn't move it around as much. So, Rob Van Ham says, my mom had her property surveyed and the surveyors found that her property line was on the opposite side of the road. So the road goes through her property. What should she do? That's actually a very good question. And there's some more things you need to know before you can answer this question properly. You need to go to wherever the deeds are registered. And for instance, there's a department in every county in Michigan, for instance, where you can go and look at the property descriptions and the lines and everything like that for any piece of property in that county. And I can tell you that two houses I owned, if you looked at the property line for the house, it went right out to the middle of the road and down like this. I lived on twice in a row. I lived on corners. I just realized that I lived on a corner. And so my property line went halfway into the road this way and halfway into the road this way. And across the street, the same thing. So when they put the roads in, they got easements from each landowner to give up half the width of the road to put a road between these two pieces of property. And the developer did that when they're putting in the homes. So you need to find out if that road was put there with an easement that's been recorded and was obtained properly, or if, for instance, your mom owned that property the entire time and somebody just came by and put a road across it without thinking about it. And then the question is, what right did they put the road there? Because I've heard of roads that were put in by the municipality, obviously, but I've also heard of private roads. So, somebody's got a piece of property over here and your piece of property is in front of it, and they decide to put a road through here to get to it. Well, you might want to ask what permission they had to do that, or if they needed permission. And so the question is, when did the road go in? Is it recorded? And those kinds of questions need to be answered. But that's a fascinating question, a fascinating issue, because obviously with adverse possession and so on, if she doesn't act after a certain period of time, she's going to lose that. So, Ellen Riddle, is Ben over by the Canada mug? It's like Fight Club, okay? Rule number one of Fight Club is we don't discuss Fight Club, okay? Rule number one of the Ben is you never ask where Ben is. You can comment on where Ben is, but putting Ben in a sentence with a question mark is a problem. So I can't answer that question for you. JJ CEO 40, did all of your properties have metal spikes in the yard? As far as I know, I have no idea. And I'll tell you why. I only once actually went out and looked for them with my metal detector and couldn't find them in one yard in particular. The yard I had the problem with the neighbor behind me. I actually went out looking, hoping I could find the spikes, and I couldn't find them. So I don't know if they were there or not. I don't know. I'd be curious about that. So I've never had a piece of property surveyed with the guys who actually do the sites and all that stuff. So Travis Williamson, Esquire. Oh man, Steve's getting into adverse possession and or prescriptive easements. And notice I did it without using those terms until the very end. Oh boy. MJC, have you ever been inside Vincetta Garage in Berkeley? They used to have a license plate collection that goes back to when the plate was a leather tag nailed to the dashboard. I've not been inside there recently, but my office used to be literally across the street from there. And Vincetta Garage is an old gas station / service station. It was an independent service station. I don't know if they ever had an affiliation with a petroleum company or not, on Woodward Avenue at Catalpa. And Vincetta Garage was there for a million years. And a few years ago, somebody bought it, turned it into a restaurant. It's a very, very cool restaurant. But I can tell you that I've not seen that license plate collection, but there used to be an antique dealer near Traverse City that had a huge collection of Petroliana, the kind of stuff the guys on American Pickers are always looking for. And this guy had the glass globes, and he had license plates. And he had the old ceramic license plates, and he had the old leather license plates. And he had a whole bunch of them. And I haven't been back there in a while. I'm not even sure if he's still there or not. But I remember looking at him, well, these things are cool. And what's interesting, this is one of those things, I think it's one of those things where some people do, some people don't. I think those crown glass globes that used to go on top of gas station gas pumps are so cool. I'd love to have one. I have no idea why. No idea why. I don't know where I'd put it. But, I mean, I've actually got, you have to trust me on this one. I got a shelf up in the corner and nothing on it. A glass globe would go really, really well there. You wouldn't be able to see it, but you know what I should do? I should mount other cameras and get a switcher, just press a button every now and then, like corner cam, or overhead cam or something. Although I don't know if I want you to see my desk. My desk is a mess. But the old crown globes in particular, the ones that are crowns, are so cool. And I vaguely remember seeing them in antique shops, but also on gas pumps in the 70s at like abandoned gas stations, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, seeing those old glass globes. So, I mean, it's a nostalgia thing. They're from before my era, but they are cool. So Ben Wilson points out, I am right here. Yeah, Ben. There you are. JJCEO40 says, were there any green colored spikes in your lawn? You know, if there were, I didn't find them with my metal detector. It's the weirdest thing. Carl's Corner says you can use your metal detector to find the spikes. Yeah, I could. I'd have to put it in all metal mode because generally I'm not looking for iron, but I can put it in and use it that way. So NIMBY SEP spikes only get put in after a paid survey. Yeah, the question is if the person before me had put them in. One of the houses I lived in, I didn't look for spikes there, but one of the houses I lived in was built in 1940. So, you know, who knows? A bunch of people lived there before me. Any one of them could have had it done. Yeah, SubGR77 reminds us there's a funny story in Michigan. This is absolutely true. A guy got a nasty letter from the DNR, Department of Natural Resources. And they said, you have built an illegal dam on your property. You must go remove the dam. And he's like, I haven't built anything. So he went and looked, and of course, it's a beaver dam. And so, as GR77 points out, they initially refused that explanation in order that he remove it. He told them to come tell the beavers to do it. Then the DNR, of course, came out and saw that it was, in fact, a beaver dam, and they left him alone. And beavers are interesting animals. They build dams in the craziest places. And I can tell you that in the tip of the Keweenaw Peninsula, about 5 or 8 miles like southeast of Copper Harbor, on the other side of the Estevan Pines, in essence, from Copper Harbor, there's an old logging trail road that trucks can go down, but not much else. Motorized, I mean ATVs and stuff, but like you could take a car down it very easily. And we used to ride our mountain bikes back there all the time. And we'd come to this one spot in the road where there's this 2-level lake. The weirdest thing. And these beavers would block this drainage pipe and fill up this whole area up to another beaver dam they had up here that was about, I'm guessing, 6 or 8 feet at the top of the dam down to the base of the pond. And so sometimes you'd go by, and if that culvert hadn't been blocked, there'd be water flowing through it and just a trickle coming down from the dam. And we saw it on the same bike trip where we'd come by one day, and there was a full lower level to the lake. And on another day, when the dam's not blocking the culvert, there's just a trickle of water going over to this dam and the big muddy flat area here. And, beavers do what they do, but it's fascinating the stuff they do. So Douglas Brown, why is adverse possession a thing? Sounds like theft to me. Adverse possession is a thing which makes sense on one level. And that is this, that let's suppose that you and I live near each other and we don't really know where our property lines are. And we both behave as if your property is here and my property is here. We behave that way for 20 years. And 21 years later, you do a survey and find out that your property line is actually here. Well, I just spent 20 years maintaining this, paying taxes on this. You acted like it was mine. Sooner or later, there comes a time where if you treat it like it's yours, it becomes yours. And I wasn't doing that necessarily out of spite. And we both thought it was mine. And so the biggest problems are the ones where somebody does something shady to get one of the things. But quite often, it is literally where everyone thinks that this is the state of affairs, and the law simply says after a period of time, that becomes the state of affairs. Canadian Robot Lady says, piano towing is one of my favorites, but I can't remember which video it's from. If I had to guess, it would be a video entitled Tow Truck Stories or True Tow Truck Stories. So I suspect if you go into YouTube and type in Lato, and I can't even spell my own name, Lato and Tow, T-O-W, you get True Tow Truck Stories and more True Tow Truck Stories. So it's one of those two. I just don't know which one it is. Episode 3.29 or episode 5.04, for those of you following along at home. Back when I had 2-digit numbers following the decimal in my title names, video names. So, Daniel Kester says, search Lato and piano. Is piano in the title? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was. I'm trying to remember the name of the video. No, that won't get it for you. Sorry. Piano's not in the title. And Steve Max says it is, in fact, more True Tow Truck Stories. I knew. Crash Override beat me to it. Say it fast. Totally True Tow Truck Stories. Totally True Tow Truck Tales. Oh, boy. Richard DeBerry, hi from West Oakland, California, about 2 hours southwest of Sutter's Mill. Yeah, Sutter's Mill, of course, is where the gold rush started, in essence. Gold find at Sutter's Mill. Someone just asked me my email address. There it is again. SteveLadles.com. And NIMBY says, if for 20 plus years a path goes through a property and the original owner allowed it and then sells the property, can the new owner block that path? Well, that happens a lot, and it can happen. And then what happens is someone who wants to use the path can then sue the owner and say, we have an easement due to use. And it's going to vary from state to state, how you have to prove it and so on. But in Michigan, one of the biggest problems that we have is abandoned railroad sidings or railroad grades, railroad track. Well, the tracks are gone, but the path is still there. And many of those were originally easements granted to the railroad or kept by the railroad, and the railroad sold off the property, but kept an easement for themselves to pass over it. In later years, many of those got turned into rails to trails conversions. So that I can tell you that there's many beautiful biking paths in Michigan that run down former railroad grades. There's one in Rochester, for instance, and a Paint Creek Trail. Flat and smooth and just, it crosses roads and stuff, but it's a beautiful trail. And what happens is someone will buy a piece of property that backs up to one of those. And there's people riding bikes back there. And they're like, hey, those people are on our property. Well, it's an easement over your property, but you can't stop it. And there was a couple of lawsuits in the last few years in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan where people got upset about snowmobilers using those paths. And they had every right to do it. And every single year, somebody goes out and builds a barricade across the path. And when the snowmobilers come there and go, hey, you blocked the path, they go, it's our property. You can't complain. It's our property. And the state of Michigan will actually step in and bring actions against people who do that sometimes. So it's a weird situation. People don't do their research to understand that, oh, you're looking at this house in the summertime. What's happening in the wintertime? So, Nathan Miller checking from Berrien Springs, Michigan. Thank you, my friends. Josh Joslin, why is spoofing a phone number even an option? I do not know. The phone company people keep claiming it would be difficult somehow. Could be, it's somehow impossible to control that. But I'm sure there's a way they could do it. It might involve a technology upgrade they can't afford. I don't know. So, JJ CEO 40, I found an 1857 Flying Eagle penny yesterday. Did you really? Where? Metal detecting, or like in your change, or like going through old drawers? I think a Flying Eagle penny is worth about $20, possibly. Depends on the condition. Pretty Butterfly points out that your oldest brother can actually be younger than you. Your older brother is older, not your oldest brother. Chuckster255 says, Steve Leto, you should make Canadian Robot Lady a channel moderator. Are you volunteering her for the extra work? Tom, what if an accident occurs on the property? Could they sue successfully the owners? That, of course, is one of the arguments the landowner will make as to why they want to keep people off their property. But, of course, the counter to that is that when you're crossing the easement, you understand that you're on the easement. You're not actually on property completely under the control of the landowner. And so as long as the landowner didn't do anything to make that easement dangerous, then you'd probably not do well with that lawsuit. The question, of course, is if somebody barricades a trail and a snowmobile runs into the barricade, you better believe there's a good lawsuit there. So, Amateur Shooter points out that my sister-in-law has an uncle younger than her. I've known people who had that situation going, largely because you've got a large spread in ages between siblings. And then at what point they have children, at what point the children have children, and so on. You can get all kinds of crazy things going on. So, Mike Toff, if a lawyer does something pro bono, does that mean they're anti-share? There you go. My throat's starting to bug me, and I am out of Gatorade, so it's a good thing we're getting close to the bottom of the hour here. Daniel Kester's pet peeve: airport is built in the middle of nothing in the 20s, and houses get built near it, and they complain about the noise. Yeah, the same is true also with shooting ranges and some farms. Many states have passed farming laws to allow, right to farm specifically, so you can't move next door to a guy who's farming and go, I don't like the smell of your farm. Shouldn't have moved next door then, should you? MJC says farmers in Leelanau County were upset railroad right-of-ways were turned into trails. So they started spreading manure. Hadn't heard of that one, but it doesn't surprise me. Leelanau County is also this part of Michigan up here. So Kurt Aspis, being the health nut you are, what kind of diet do you have? It's not the greatest diet. My thinking is I just exercise a lot and try to not eat too much. But I wouldn't say my diet is necessarily a thing of science. But I tend to avoid. I'm not fully keto or anything, but I do more protein, less carbohydrates to some extent. So I hate to do this. I was hoping to have one last discussion before we went off. And John Emmerich from Garden City just checked in too, so I appreciate that. But I'm going to have to wrap it up. Wait. Johnny Knoxville's here? Dude, I was just about to sign off. Hang on, let me see if I can squeeze one last. I was just about to sign off and Johnny Knoxville steps in. Where have you been? Johnny Knoxville, 74 and partly cloudy in Bad Axe, Michigan. But where have you been, dude? We've been missing you. I think it's been 3 or 4 weeks since you've been here. Oh, boy. Wait, you were watching television? He just got done watching MotoGP race. Dude, that's what TiVo is for. DVR that thing. DVR that, and you got to be here. It changes the chemistry of the entire live chat if you're not here. Okay, so Johnny was on vacation in Wisconsin. I'll buy that for a week or two. So, and JP points out that he met me on Woodward Avenue yesterday. And Nimby Sepp says, yeah, we were worried that COVID got him. Oh, and riding an e-bike. Cool. Very good friend of mine was in an e-bike accident about a week ago. Very sad. He's okay. I mean, he'll survive, but it was ugly. The problem is I don't have a mute on this microphone. I tried that once and it didn't work. Crypto Ace, I just watched the Skulls trilogy and I'm wondering if you wear the Breitling to cover the brand of the secret society. No, I'll tell you, I shot a video this morning. I forgot to put my watch on. So there's no brands. There's a tan line, but no brand. Oh, boy. Johnny Knoxville, you have to ride an e-bike like a motorcycle. That's exactly the problem. My friend was riding one on a paved trail, and he hit an edge, and he went over unconscious, smashed his face into the ground, and busted the lower orbital part of his face, and woke up, I think, in the hospital. So, yeah, amateur shooter points that Simon Cowell wrecked broke his back, but my friend smashed in part of his face. So that's not good. Lucky 13. Only 2 bones I ever broke was because of bike accidents. Only one involved alcohol. I've broken bones. I broke that bone there. I broke my wrist and I broke my thumb all in the space of like 2 years. But one was mountain biking. One was falling off the bumper of my M35. And one was playing soccer. So. Johnny Knoxville, I'm currently shopping for helmets. I've got a mountain bike helmet. I just don't always wear it, but another story altogether. It wouldn't have saved my broken bone. Wouldn't have saved my friend. I'm pretty sure he was wearing a helmet when he crashed. William Michaels, what kind of watch do you wear? The watch is a Breitling. And the box is down there, but it's buried. Breitling is a watch company. You'll occasionally see Jerry Seinfeld wears one in Seinfeld. Simon Gordon Ramsay wears one, but he wears a different model than I do. But Breitling is the watch company. It's a mechanical self-winding watch, but I wear it every day. Tom, don't crash on your Peloton. I haven't yet. Dave Shelton, is it legal to scrap copper pennies? David, I believe it's not legal. I do not believe it is legal. So, oh boy. Fred Hill broke 2 ribs on a bike in high school. David Shelton, why isn't it legal to scrap copper pennies? Because pennies are worth more than a penny. And so if people were allowed to scrap them, the mint would just be making them and people would be scrapping. They'd make more. They'd be scrapping them, make more. So they anticipate that people would do that. So I believe a nickel was worth even more than face value compared to a penny. So it would make more sense to scrap nickels if you're allowed to. But again, it would be stupid. It would be a waste of taxpayer money. Oh, Canadian Robot Lady's checking out. Thank you for checking in when you did. I contacted her on short notice to remind her to be here. So Betty Anderson says, please check out Tow Truck Stories on Leto. Super funny. Well, thank you. I appreciate the plug. Yeah, Weldopedia is pointing out that pennies are not worth more than a penny unless you're speaking specifically about the earlier ones that are more copper and the modern ones which are zinc. And I realize that, but my point simply is that's what he's getting at, is that you could melt the older pennies and it'd be worth more than a penny a piece. So, Blind Leader 42 might be illegal, but is it enforceable? That's the question. The question, of course, is could you do it economically on a scale necessary to make the money without getting caught? Because I don't think it's that easy to melt copper. I mean, I know it can be done, but, you know. Johnny Knoxville, I put a weight bench out in front of my mom's house and it was gone in hours, most likely for scrap. You know what's funny is I was helping somebody move a while back and they had an old barbecue. And you know how barbecues get after you leave them outside about 10 years? It's nothing but a chunk of rust with a propane canister that looks sketchy. And going to move it was heavy. And I go, what are you going to do with this? They go, I don't know, throw it away. I go, watch this. Took it to the end of the driveway, about an hour later, it was gone. So anything that's heavy as it's heavy in metal, it's gone. Daniel Kester says pennies before 1959 are all copper except for either 42 or 43. And you're talking about the 1943 penny, which is a steel penny. And this is a great trivia question. Since you guys have hung in here this long, I'm going to tell you that the steel penny from 1943 is the only coin ever minted by the U.S. Mint that contains 0 copper. Gold coins contain copper. Silver dimes contain copper. A small amount. So the point is that copper is in every single coin ever made by the American Mint in some small amount, except for steel pennies. So it's a trivia question. Don't know if you can whip that out of parties. Not sure if anyone really cares. But it's something that popped into my head. And Johnny Knoxville says, hey, I'm thinking about buying gold and silver like Art Bell used to advise. Yeah, both gold and silver are up quite a bit now. Nobody important points out that there are a few 1943 copper pennies. They're fairly rare. There's like 5 or 10 maybe, something like that. And I mentioned a while back about silver coins, 1964 and earlier in America, dimes, quarters, halves, and so on. So solid silver versus the clad. I mentioned how those, you can often talk about the multiplier, how many times face they're worth. And I remember when it's like 5 or 10 times face is a big deal. I think now it's like 20 or 25 times face, meaning that a dime is worth $2.50, $3, something like that. Silver dime. So silver prices are doing this. Then again, so is Ford stock. So David Shelton, are silver coins legal to melt? The same rule would apply to American coins, regardless of whether they're new, old, or otherwise. I'm pretty sure. And JJ CEO 40 says, beware of Chinese counterfeit coins. Somebody actually sent me a photograph of some coins they bought that were real and some coins they bought that they knew were counterfeit. And I'm pretty sure that some of them were Chinese counterfeits, like a 1909 SVDB penny. And he goes, they look real. They look real. There's factories in China cranking these things out. So I'd be really, really leery about buying any coins sight unseen, especially if they're not slabbed. And if they're slabbed by, one of the companies that slabs the coins, then it's probably a safer bet. But, that's the thing. So anyways, I am going to check out right now because we've been on for well over an hour. I wanted to give Johnny Knoxville some time to explain his whereabouts. And I'll see you guys all soon. The videos, of course, every day, next Sunday, same time, same place. Until then, you behave yourself. Bye-bye.